I would think that if I was 326 years old, I'd be very at peace. But I don't think at 27 I had a hardcore life. In the sci-fi universe, few series shine like the Star Trek, Deep Space Nine franchise. Star Trek DS9 had it all: action, betrayal, love, and drama. On screen, the crew moved as one. Off-screen, not quite. Tension simmered. And one cast member had enough. Terry Farrell, who played fan-favorite Jadzia Dax, walked away. Why? What went down behind the scenes? Join as we're taking a trip to space to uncover the drama they didn't show on screen. Chapter 2, an unconventional start. Terry Farrell's journey to stardom didn't start on a starship. It started in Cedar Rapids. Like many small-town girls with big dreams, she took a leap. In her junior year of high school, she submitted a photo to Elite Model Management, one of the top modeling agencies in New York. 2 days after arriving in the city at just 16, she landed an exclusive contract with Mademoiselle magazine. That quick rise led her to the covers of Vogue, both the Italian and German editions, and into the pages of American Vogue. She was on her way, but the catwalk wasn't where her heart truly belonged. After 18 months of modeling, Terry began studying acting. She kept one foot in the fashion world to pay the bills, but her focus had shifted. Her early roles reflected that grind, playing a model in Paper Dolls and landing a supporting role in the 1986 comedy Back to School alongside Rodney Dangerfield. That was her film debut and the first hint that Farrell had something to offer beyond her looks. She also appeared in shows like The Twilight Zone, Quantum Leap, and The Cosby Show, building her resume one guest appearance at a time. By the early 90s, she was chasing roles with more substance. In 1992, she was cast as Kat in the U.S. adaptation of Red Dwarf, a sci-fi comedy called Hit in the UK. Sadly, the pilot never aired. It was dead on arrival, but the disappointment didn't last long. Soon after, Farrell was cast in a role that would define her career: Jadzia Dax in Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. As a Starfleet science officer aboard a space station near a strategic wormhole, Dax wasn't just a pretty face. She was a trill, a species whose bodies host long-living symbionts. Jadzia Dax carried centuries of memories and experiences, including those of her 7 former hosts. Farrell portrayed her with calm authority, a touch of mystery and unexpected humor, becoming a fan favorite in the process. Over 6 seasons, she helped anchor one of the boldest and most mature Star Trek series ever made. But as DS9 neared its final season, behind-the-scenes tensions began to brew. Creative differences, contract negotiations, and alleged power struggles with the show's producers pushed Farrell to a breaking point. When she left at the end of Season 6, it shocked fans. Instead of recasting or writing her off gently, the studio killed off her character's host. So, what exactly happened behind the scenes? Keep watching to find out. Working on Star Trek, Terry Farrell's portrayal of Jadzia Dax on Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, remains one of the most beloved elements of the franchise. For 6 seasons, she brought to life a character that wasn't just a Starfleet science officer or a host of centuries of memories. She was a beacon of warmth, wisdom, and quiet strength in a world often steeped in war, politics, and moral ambiguity. But her path to Deep Space Nine wasn't exactly written in the stars. After a handful of roles in shows like Quantum Leap and The Cosby Show and a short-lived pilot for the U.S. version of Red Dwarf, Farrell was offered a role of Jadzia Dax. At the time, DS9 had already begun production. She was the last main cast member brought on, and she walked into a set already brimming with energy, pressure, and expectations. From the beginning, it was overwhelming. The size of the op set alone was intimidating. Farrell remembers being wide-eyed, nervous, and excited all at once. The makeup process was just as intense. Her character initially had a forehead prosthetic, but it didn't quite work. Michael Westmore, the show's legendary makeup artist, made a bold change. He removed the prosthetic and introduced the now iconic trill spots. The adjustment meant some of her early scenes had to be res-hot. It was a crash course in franchise-scale television. But once the dust settled, Farrell began finding her place both on set and in the role of Jadzia. What drew her most to her character Jadzia Dax was her stillness, her confidence, and her inner peace. While Farrell herself felt raw and unsure at times in her real life, Dax offered a sort of armor through the character. She found a sense of stability and maturity that she hadn't yet developed in her personal journey. Playing Dax made me feel secure. She once reflected, it was like an anchor. In many ways, Jadzia Dax became the heart of Deep Space Nine. Amidst the show's often gritty and philosophical storylines, she brought a spark, optimism, curiosity, even flirtatious humor. Farrell's natural energy radiated through character, giving the audience a sense of hope that was never too loud, never too forced. It just felt real. Her dynamic with Benjamin Sisko, played by Avery Brooks, became one of the series' emotional cores. Off camera, Brooks would often tell her she was too open, but that openness was what gave Jadzia life. And yet behind that magic was a growing tension. As the series progressed, Farrell began to feel the strain. Creative disagreements and conflicts behind the scenes, particularly involving showrunner Rick Berman, began to overshadow the joy of the work. When negotiations for her return in the 7th season began, they quickly turned sour. Farrell had hoped for more flexibility, perhaps even the chance to reduce her on-screen presence slightly to explore other projects. But instead of compromise, she felt pressure that eventually pushed her to a breaking point. Rather than stay and battle behind the scenes, Farrell chose to walk away. Her departure shocked fans, and the studio's response was swift. Jadzia was killed off at the end of Season 6. The symbiote lived on in a new host. But for many viewers, Deep Space Nine never felt quite the same without her. Shortly after, Farrell joined the cast of Becker, a sitcom where the atmosphere was lighter, the stakes lower, and the creative tensions far less intense. It was a new chapter and a needed breath of fresh air. Years later, fans still talk about her exit. Why did it happen? Could it have been avoided? Would the show have ended differently if she had stayed? No matter the speculation, one thing remains true. Terry Farrell's Jadzia Dax left an indelible mark on Star Trek history. Her performance brought light to a dark space, and that light still shines. Now, to the real reason Terry Farrell finally said goodbye to her longest-running show. Chapter 3. Terry Farrell's Marriage. Marriages. Terry Farrell has had an interesting life, both on and off-screen. In 2002, she married actor Brian Baker, best known as a cheerful guy from those old Sprint commercials. Together, they had a son named Max. But after more than a decade of marriage, they quietly divorced in 2015. Then, in a twist that feels almost too perfect for Star Trek fans, Farrell found love again, this time within the Star Trek universe itself. She got engaged to Adam Nimoy, the son of Leonard Nimoy, the original Spock from Star Trek, the original series. Adam, a television director, had long been connected to the Star Trek world through his father, but he'd also made a name for himself. In fact, he directed a touching documentary called For the Love of Spock in honor of his father's legacy. Their engagement made headlines in 2017. For fans, it felt like a sweet crossing of generations. The son of Spock and the woman, who played a trio with 8 lifetimes of memories. They made it official the same year and were married shortly after. It was a second marriage for both. Each had children from their previous relationships, and both had ties to the Star Trek fandom. Terry even posted the news on Twitter, sending the internet into a happy buzz, though it took a few hours for the news to ripple across social media, or as fans joked, subspace traffic. But like some star ships that drift apart, their marriage eventually came to an end in 2022. After 5 years together, Terry and Adam divorced. Still, their story remains a unique chapter in Star Trek history, not just because of who they were, but because of how closely life and fandom intertwined. 2 people from different corners of the franchise found connection, even if it didn't last forever. Terry and Brian Baker's marriage wasn't the only love story to emerge from the Star Wars franchise. Other Star Trek casts who have ended up together. When it comes to Star Trek castmates, sometimes the on-screen chemistry spills over into real life, and a few relationships blossom behind the scenes, creating their own kind of star-crossed stories. 2 of Deep Space Nine's most beloved actors, Alexander Siddig, who played Dr. Julian Basher and Nana Visitor, actually tied the knot in real life. They were married from 1997 to 2001 and share a son named Django. What's remarkable is how close they remained even after their separation. Before and during their marriage, Siddig and Visitor were not only partners, but also best friends, and they've maintained a strong co-parenting relationship. According to Visitor, they still see each other at least twice a year and talk regularly, showing a rare kind of mutual respect and care that lasts beyond marriage. Then there's Roxanne Dawson, best known to Star Trek fans as B'Elanna Torres from Star Trek, Voyager. You might have spotted her under a few different names, Roxanne Dawson, Roxanne Biggs, and Roxanne Biggs Dawson, thanks to her personal life. Before either Dawson or Casey Biggs, who played Damar on DS9, stepped onto the Star Trek stage, they were actually married from 1985 to 1987. Their relationship predated their Star Trek careers, and while they don't often discuss each other in interviews, both speak highly of one another. Both actors have since moved on and married others, but their early connection adds an interesting twist to Star Trek lore. And speaking of on-screen sparks that crossed over off-screen, Patrick Stewart and Jennifer Hetridge's relationship is another juicy tidbit. But their relationship wasn't without its fair share of drama. Patrick Stewart, the man who brought Captain Jean-Luc Pierre to life on Star Trek, The Next Generation, wasn't just dealing with alien threats and space politics on screen. His real life was full of drama, too. When TNG started filming, Stewart had just ended a long marriage. He and his first wife, Sheila Falconer, had been together for over 20 years. They got married when he was in his 20s, long before Star Trek made him famous. But by the late 80s, the relationship had fallen apart, not because of fame, but because Stewart got involved with someone new. That someone was Jennifer Hetridge, the actress who played Vash, one of Pia Card's love interests in the show. Their chemistry in episodes like Cupid felt real, because they weren't just acting. Stewart and Hetridge were dating in real life during seasons 3 and 4. In fact, while filming QID, they were actually engaged, but the wedding never happened, and they eventually broke things off quietly. Later on, Stewart married Wendy Neuse, a co-producer on the show. That marriage lasted until 2003. So yes, Stewart's love life around Star Trek was messy, more so than most fans realized. But his struggles didn't stop with relationships. Stewart later shared in his 2023 memoir that he had a hard time sleeping after his divorce. To cope, he started using sleeping pills. At first, it seemed harmless, just something to help him rest and keep up with the demands of being the lead on a huge show. But over time, he became dependent on them. When he finally decided to quit, things got rough. He had withdrawal symptoms that hit hard. He described waking up in the middle of the night in a full-body panic, sweating, and even feeling like his house was haunted. It wasn't ghosts. It was his mind and body, struggling to adjust. Thankfully, he got through it. It took time, but Stewart eventually found peace again without the pills. Looking back, the romance between Pequard and Voss still stands out to many fans. But behind that storyline was a real-life love, a breakup, and a personal battle that Stewart kept mostly hidden for years. It's a reminder that even the strongest captains can have rough patches, and that healing doesn't happen in warp speed. Another Star Trek cast who got into an interesting relationship was Linda Park, who played Enan Hashiato on Star Trek Enterprise from 2001 to 2005. During that time, she dated Tom Hardy, who appeared as Shinson in the 2002 movie Star Trek Nemesis. Their relationship lasted from 2003 to 2004, and Park even moved to South London to live with Hardy. Things got serious enough that they talk about starting their own theater company together. But before any of that could happen, they parted ways, and Park moved back to California. She later married actor Daniel Bess in 2011. Meanwhile, Hardy divorced his wife in 2004 and remarried Charlotte Riley in 2014. Marina Sirtis, who brought Counselor Deanna Troi to life in Star Trek The Next Generation, often finds herself mistaken in the gossip world. Many fans think she's or was dating Michael Dorn, who played Worf, but she's happily married to a different Michael Lamper. Unlike Dorn, Lamper is an actor, but a talented rock guitarist. He's toured with legendary bands like the Allman Brothers Band and Los Lobos, and is a member of the Eagles tribute band Desperado. Here's a fun tidbit. Lamper even appeared on The Next Generation in the episode The Vengeance Factor as an Akamaren gatherer, an appearance he landed while dating Surtees. They married that same year, and their relationship remained strong. Leonard Nimoy, the iconic Spock and one of the most recognizable faces of Star Trek, also found love connected to the show. Nimoy is credited not only with shaping Spock's character, but also with popularizing the Vulcan salute and the phrase "live long and prosper." He married Susan Bay in 1989, who appeared as Admiral Rallman in 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine, Prologue and Whispers. Their marriage lasted until Nimoy's passing in 2015, marking a long and happy partnership linked by their shared ties to the Star Trek universe. But Star Trek hasn't always been about harmony. Behind the scenes, not everyone agreed on what the future should look like. The real reason Terry Farrell left Star Trek. Chapter 4, Jadzia and Worf. When Star Trek Deep Space Nine came out in 1993, it was very different from the other Star Trek shows. It didn't follow a ship going from planet to planet. Instead, the story stayed in one place, a space station near a wormhole. This wormhole led to another part of the galaxy, and soon a powerful enemy called the Dominion came through it that changed everything. One of the best characters on the show was Jadzia Dax. Jadzia was smart, funny, and full of life. She was a trill, a species where a long, living creature called a symbiont lives inside a host. The symbiont Dax had lived many lives before Jadzia, so she had the memories and skills of all those past lives. One of them, Curzon Dax, had been best friends with Captain Sisko. So when Jadzia joined the crew, Sisko already saw her like family. Jadzia was more than just a science officer. She was brave and open-minded and could hang out with Klingon or solve science problems without breaking a sweat. She also had a strong friendship with Kira and later fell in love with Worf. That relationship surprised a lot of fans. But it worked. Jadzia matched Worf's warrior energy, and they made a powerful couple. They even got married. By season 6 of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Jadzia Dax had become one of the show's most loved characters. Smart, strong, funny, and full of heart. She wasn't just a science officer. She was the soul of the crew. Her bond with Captain Sisko, her wild side with Klingon, and her love for Worf made her unforgettable. But then came the shocker. In the season 6 finale, Tears of the Prophets, Jadzia was killed. While visiting the Temple of the Prophets, she was attacked by Gul Dukat, who was possessed by evil spirit-like beings called the Paw Wraiths. She was badly hurt and later died in sick bay. The Dax symbiote was saved and put into a new host, Ezri, who joined the crew in season 7, but for many fans, it just wasn't the same. So, what really happened behind the scenes? The truth is, actress Terry Farrell didn't want to fully leave the show. She just wanted a lighter workload. After 6 years of long filming hours, she asked to appear in only half of the final season's episodes, so she could explore other roles. She didn't ask to quit. She didn't ask to be written off, but the studio, especially executive producer Rick Burr, refused. They told her, either do all 26 episodes or do none at all. Terry Farrell later spoke openly about her problems with Berman. In the book, The 50-Year Mission, she said he made sexist comments about her body and tried to pressure her into staying. The problems with my leaving were with Rick Berman. She said, in my opinion, he's just very misogynistic. He'd comment on your bra size not being voluptuous. That stuff was so intense, especially the first couple of years. She said she wasn't trying to walk away, just trying to talk. But Berman called her request hardball and wouldn't budge. Negotiations got ugly. A junior producer even told her she'd end up working at Kmart without the show. Farrell described being pressured constantly, even getting calls right before scenes, asking if she'd signed the contract yet. He was trying to bully me into saying yes, she recalled. Meanwhile, Bear said he was unaware of the tension, and had he known, he might have stepped in or even left with her. Berman never addressed Farrell's claims about his behavior. He denied firing her and claimed he didn't have that kind of power, saying the studio basically said, no way. She does all 26 episodes or nothing. Whether Berman had a hand in it or not, the result was the same. Jadzia was gone, and the loss hit the show hard. When Jadzia Dax arrived in Season 7, she didn't connect with fans the way Jadzia did. Jadzia was written as nervous, unprepared, and unsure of herself. A huge contrast to the bold, confident Jadzia. The romantic tension between Jadzia and Worf, still mourning his wife, fell off. While the two shared a brief relationship had faded, and Jadzia was eventually paired with Dr. Julian Basher by the series finale. Meanwhile, Farrell's exit remained a sore spot. She didn't appear in the series finale, What You Leave Behind. Producers had written a scene for Jadzia, but it was cut due to budget concerns. Farrell also didn't give permission for her likeness to be used in the flashback montage, another sign of how bitter things had become. Over the years, though, Farrell has spoken with more warmth about her time on Deep Space Nine. At a 2007 Star Trek convention, she said she wished she hadn't left so soon, admitting Jadzia Dax was a cool-ass character. She compared the role to her later part on Becker, saying, "It's hard to go from playing a hero to a neurotic bad cook." At Trey Las Vegas in 2014, she showed up in full costume and trill makeup, wearing a shirt that read, Dax 539. A tribute to the 539 times makeup artist Michael Westmore applied her iconic spots. She thanked fans for their continued love and loyalty, saying she'd gladly return to the franchise if given the chance. Maybe as a clone, a hologram, or a version of Jadzia from another universe. In 2017, Farrell appeared in Renegades, a fan series with many Star Trek alumni. Her character Jada was clearly inspired by Jadzia, a subtle nod for Time fans. The series avoided using direct Star Trek branding, but still brought together actors like Walter Koenig, Nichelle Nichols, Robert Beltran, Tim Russ, Aaron Eisenberg, and Cirroc Lofton. Though her time on Deep Space Nine ended in pain, Jadzia Dax remains one of the franchise's most beloved characters. A scientist, warrior, friend, and lover,